Please give a rousing, bold welcome to Dr. Thomas E. Woods, Jr.
Now, a great analogy that Ludwig von Mises, the great Austrian economist of the 20th century, gives us is, he says, think of the economy as being like a master builder building a house, but who falsely believes he has 20% more bricks than he really has. Now, let's assume for the sake of argument he can't buy any more bricks. Let's just say that he believes that the resource base at his disposal is 20% larger than it really is. Well, what type of house is he going to build? He's going to put down, for instance, foundations that are much broader than he otherwise would. He might even build a house in a slightly different style than he otherwise would. Now, is it better for the master builder to discover his error in the short run or when he's putting the last brick on the structure? Well, of course, the sooner he finds out that he has a false estimate of his brick supply, the better. Obviously, if he puts the very last brick on and then turns his head and says, oh, I still have half the story to go, and, there's no roof and everything's all disaster, that's terrible. Now that's all squandered. He's going to have to tear it all down. He's squandered all that labor time. All those resources are permanently squandered. Society is all the poorer for this. Whereas if he had discovered his error after laying the second row of bricks, well, too bad for him, but at least it's manageable, the error. Well, the reason this analogy is so useful is that we compare it to the economy as a whole. And so when the central bank artificially brings interest rates down, investors now begin on investment trajectories which, like the house in the master builder example, cannot all be completed with the existing resources. So is it better that they discover this error in the short run or in the long run? Well, we are being told every time we hear by the central bank that the solution to our dilemma caused by artificially low interest rates is even lower interest rates. We need interest rates down to zero. In fact, there are some people who are actually saying zero is too high. I'm not joking about that. Zero is too high for interest rates. So in other words, more of what caused the problem is somehow going to be the solution. Well, every time we're told that is exactly analogous to saying to our master builder, or figuring out what is the solution to his dilemma, and concluding that what we really should do is just liquor him up so he doesn't notice the brick supply going down. Just liquor him up so he's just laying the bricks, not thinking about tomorrow. So yeah, you can keep the apparent prosperity going. Sure, he's still employing people. He's still engaged in the building process. Wonderful, great. But that doesn't make the unsustainability of what he's doing go away. And likewise, just pouring more money, more of the medium of exchange into the economy, cannot correct the structural problems that the initial artificial lowering of interest rates caused. Every time there is a Fed-fueled boom, everybody on earth thinks, I can make $1 million in the stock market. Everybody immediately thinks there are get-rich-quick schemes. I can flip houses, I get rich in the stock market, and so, you watch that John Beck free and clear home system at 3:30 in the morning. I can show you how to buy a house for $200. Those people have nothing on what the Federal Reserve pulls on people. They think they can get rich quick with various schemes like this. But anyway, so here we've gone through the dot-com boom and bust. So the bust comes, and Greenspan by 2001 thinks, you know what? I'm sick of this whole bust thing. Let's have a boom, man. Time for a boom. So what do? Well, all I can do as the Fed chairman, practically, is lower interest rates. So, when all you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. So let's lower those interest rates back down. Now notice, the recession in 2001 was the only one on record in which housing starts did not decline. Now that's very significant, because that shows that Greenspan, instead of letting the economy clear itself out, clear out all these investments that shouldn't have been started in the first place, discourage people from continuing on unsustainable trajectories. Instead of just clearing that all out, it was basically halfway allowed to continue. And because new housing starts didn't decline, it was right at that time that people began to hear the myths of the housing bubble, that housing prices never go down. Apparently everything else goes bust in recession, not housing. Housing prices never go down. A house is the best investment you can make. You can make quick money by flipping houses. This all takes root because old Alan won't let the economy take its medicine then. And so sure, he holds off the recession. Congratulations. Yep, he held it off. And now look what we're facing. Much worse. Because we've all been on this unsustainable trajectory all those intervening years. Now, I do want to point out that when Mises gives that master builder example, it's not only a good example because it's an analogy of producers investing in things that the economy doesn't have the resources for. It's also a good analogy for what can happen to consumers during these artificial booms. Because during this artificial boom, where housing prices are going through the roof, to crazy, crazy levels, people all thought they were richer than they actually were. And they acted on that false belief. They all thought they had more bricks than they really had. So, sure, a $5 cup of coffee at Starbucks, sky's the limit, right? It doesn't make much sense, but I'll do it. $7 ice cream cone, sign me up. This is the way people think. They take out home equity loans, they buy fancy cars, they go on exotic vacations, they do things they wouldn't otherwise have done. They wouldn't have done if they had a real handle on what their actual non-distorted net worth was. So in effect, the Fed, by making debt extremely inexpensive, encourages people themselves, as consumers, to continue on unsustainable trajectories of consumption that are now being exposed. And people wouldn't have done half the things that they've done had they known the truth. Had interest rates been allowed to tell the truth instead of being forced to lie. Now, sometimes we hear things like, well, you know, the housing bubble and all these asset bubbles, these are fueled really by psychological manias. Like there's just a psychological attachment to particular assets at a given time, and that bids their prices up. Now, I don't want to dismiss that explanation entirely. I do think that is a factor. But psychology alone cannot keep a bubble going as long as this one was going. Because suppose there hadn't been a Fed in the picture. Let's suppose there had been a crazy mania where people just decided they want to buy a lot of houses. What would have happened is that, okay, just as in our case, price of houses would have gone way up, but the banks would have run out of money to lend. So interest rates would have shot up too, and that would have put an end to the speculation in real estate. That would have been it. No housing bubble, and therefore no destruction of people's lives when it goes bust. Well, when you have a Soviet commissar in charge of money and interest rates, who can create all the money he wants to out of thin air, well, he can now flood the banks with additional money, and now it seems like, hey, we've got a ton to lend. Let's keep this phony baloney boom going.